Okay, all right, let's start. Today we'll discuss these three algorithms of scheduling. So I will have about 15 minutes class, maybe less than that. Okay, because I know attendance quite low, not even 50% students are available. But that's usually the pattern in your class, so can't say much. All right, so we'll study these three: FIFO, shortage of first, and shortest remaining time first. Okay, in the next class, we will look into round robin and some other techniques. Okay, all right. You can read it from these places. Okay. So this is what we have read earlier, right? Okay, so the process can be of different kind. Some processes are primarily computation bound or CPU bound, wherein there's a lot of computation, less of IO. But most of the processes are becoming more of a IO bound and less of compute bound. Okay, and one reason for that is that processes are becoming faster. Okay, so if processes are becoming faster, IO is not becoming faster at that pace. Okay, so processes, since processes are the processes are becoming faster, so compute time which was initially large now becomes small, while IO is not, techniques are not progressing as fast, so IO remains significant part of overall time taken by process, right? So we see nowadays most of our processes are of this kind, which are IO bound. Okay, and then we have seen preemptive versus non-preemptive scheduling. In preemptive scheduling, remember there is a timer interrupt which causes mode switch from user mode to kernel mode. Obviously, then a scheduler also come to the play, and then the scheduler can decide to run the same process or thread or switch the process or thread. Okay, so that's preemptive scheduling. Okay, where non-preemptive is that let process run, for whatever time it can run until it asks for yield. Okay, or it asks for IO and so on, right? Um, so otherwise, so it means that if process is not asking for yield or not doing IO or something like that, then it may run for hours. Okay, so there are advantages, disadvantages of both schemes. So we'll look at some of these in this class, right? Okay, all right. So in general, we can say scheduling algorithms are of the following type: batch type, interactive type, and real time system type. So this is what we studied in last class, right? This is what we also seen. Uh, batch systems are still in use because there are a lot of jobs which require batch processing, where there's no user waiting for the results. However, these are also deadline oriented, that if you're running, for example, payroll of a large company, it has got to be over before the payday comes or something like that. Okay, so these are also in some sense important tasks, but there is not a user sitting on terminal and watching and just checking why didn't I get the response and so on, right? And then the scheduling goals and criteria is minimize response time. Is a time between issuing a command and getting result. When you submit a job, okay, and or submit, or when process starts or scheduled, and when it ends. Okay, that's response time. Okay, will sometimes the other terminologies are also used, right? It's called completion time. Okay, we'll use these two terminologies. Maximum throughput is maximize the number of jobs that are executed. Okay, because in some sense I mean, more jobs, more processes or threads will complete, there'll be more happiness in some sense, right? I mean, it's just if you have limited amount of money, what do? You give most of the money to one person, or you distribute it, small amount among uh, many people and so on, right? So similar thought is here, that maximize the number of jobs that are run, that runs to completion, right? All right. And then turnaround time is average elapsed time between, is this terminology same as completion time, is used in terms of batch systems. So we will not use this mostly in this course. Maybe so once we will use this. Okay, and then fairness, another thing that we'll have to take care of, that is scheduling algorithm fair to all processes or not? That's a question, right? And for efficient scheduling, it's not necessary for scheduler to be fair. For example, scheduler may prefer short duration jobs first, okay, rather than running a job which is very long in duration. It may give it may not pick up that job for very long time, and then try to finish large number of small jobs first. Okay, so this is what we studied in the last class. So today we look at these algorithms. First come first serve, all of us know this, right? Where do you use this algorithm?
QN.
Yeah, plain everywhere. Even for example, supermarket you go for shopping, or nowadays most of the
Ticket
shops there is a
purchase.
queue, right? Yeah, ticket purchase, anything where there is a one server and then people queue up, and obviously everyone has same priority. Then whoever comes first, gets service first. Okay, you go to supermarket or a store, big store, and you go in front of counter, right? It doesn't matter, right? You are a student, or you are a millionaire or billionaire. The person at the counter will treat everyone the same. And even if you're some billionaire comes in front of you, jumps up the queue and then say that I'm billionaire, you'll say, what will say? Who cares? Okay. So this is a very fair algorithm that we use in life. Okay. However, there cannot be fairness all the time. For example, even in airport counters, there are priority queue. Okay, for those who have been regular customers, or those who have higher class tickets and so on and so forth. So there is always a separate queue for people who are privileged ones, right? Who have higher priority. Okay, so that's the reason there is a scheme called priority pass, which gives priority to travelers who have this pass. Okay, all right. So this is very common method. Okay, so but in computer systems or batch systems, it means that run a job until it's done, including IO. It means that even if there is IO, then don't swap it out. Okay, let it be, let IO be over and let job complete and bring in the other job. So here let's take a simple example. There are three processes, P1, P2, P3, and P1 takes 24 seconds, P3 takes 3 seconds, and P2 takes 3, and P3 also takes 3. So now since process P1 has come first, they arrive in order of P1, P2, P3. This will be scheduled first. Then P2 will be scheduled, then P3 will be scheduled. So waiting time for P1 is 0, waiting time for P2 is 24, and waiting time for P3 is 27. So average waiting time is 17. And what is average completion time? Completion time for this is 24. Completion time for P2 is 27, and completion time for P3 is 30. So average completion time is 27 seconds. Okay. All right. So advantage is a very simple algorithm and easy to implement, but the disadvantage is that it has convoy effect. Okay, when you go to grocery store and there are multiple queues there, I'm sure you run an algorithm, right? Which queue to join? What do you do?
Queue with the least number.
The smallest queues, yeah.
Yeah, but normally everyone uses this algorithm, and queues are generally of the same size. Generally, there may be difference of one or something, and which we nobody can observe. Otherwise, people are smart enough to join the shortest queue. So there's the simple thing that happens, that queues are generally of same length. Rarely it happens that the queue lengths are, one queue has just 2 people and other has 10. So usually it's the same. Then what is the other thing that you observe?
Service speed.
Hmm?
Service speed fast.
Yeah, I mean sometimes a processor may be faster, but generally that also you don't have choice. Once you stand in the queue, you can observe. Only after some time you observe. See, usually what I do is that I look at the people ahead, what kind of things they have in their trolley. Okay, if the trolley is overfull, or actually some people may have 2 trolleys, then I may not want to join that queue, right? Or I will see that queue in which most of the people have 1 or 2 things, right? Okay, so same thing. If there is a very heavy job that comes in, okay, like a customer in front of you has 200 items, then you'll think that oh my God, I mean, I will have to wait at least for 200 seconds or even more. Okay, maybe 10 minutes or something like that. So similarly, if there's a very big job comes and is scheduled, and note there's a first come first served, until it's done fully, then people behind it or jobs behind it will be stuck for very long time until this guy is done. So this is called convoy effect. So it's something like this. So there is this is the queue that will form. Right now there's only one job, it's scheduled, so there's no queue, and x-axis of course time. So now another job comes and queue starts forming. So now, since the first come first serve, it has to wait until the first job finishes, which is the blue one finishes. So now before the blue one finishes, another job comes, so it will also get behind in the queue. Okay, now of course first job completes at this time period, and then the green one comes here. So now the queue has only one left out, right? So now after this green completes, then light green completes, and dark green also schedule and completes, right? Now let's see next. Now the red job comes. Now here we are not showing the duration of the job, but we are showing a job that's red in color comes. Okay, and then a blue job comes. Now the red takes very long time to complete. Okay, so it's a computation heavy. So what will happen now? The queue, the queue will start becoming, as new jobs will come, queue will become longer. Okay, so now queue is forming. So now after this, you can see the effect wherein once this job is over, these jobs will get scheduled and queue will become again kind of 0. Okay, so now here at this point in time, so many jobs are waiting because of just one job ahead. Okay, so this is a non-preemptive scheduling, wherein we are assuming right now that even the red job is not doing any IO or is not yielding, right? So now the convoy of small tasks tend behind to build up when large one is running, right? So there is a huge queue builds up, and this is a problem. Now imagine the waiting time for all this will be quite high. Okay, and response time, completion time will also be quite high. Okay, so this is a very simple algorithm, but and we use often in life. But you will also see there is a variation of this in life also, right? I mean, we have seen, even in big stores, you would have seen, if you go to, for example, Tata Star Bazaar, okay, then you will see there is all, or maybe DMart, there is always a counter for people who have just 2 or 3 items. Okay, it says the less than 5 item queue. This is nothing but they are trying to prioritize jobs which have shorter runtime. Okay, so now if the same thing we schedule it in this way, we schedule P2 first, P3 next, and P1 at the end, because P1 has longest compute time, and then the waiting time for P1 is 6, P2 is 0, and P3 is 3, right? P2 is starting at this, P3 is starting here, and P1 is starting at 6. So average waiting time is quite low then, right? It's just 3. Okay, similarly, average completion time will also be low, 13, which was earlier 17. So it's 3 versus 17, and now 13 versus 27. So there's the advantage we have got, just by reversing the order. Okay, so it means that the performance of this can be good, average, or very bad depending on the sequence in which jobs comes. Okay, all right. So it's very simple. Short job gets stuck behind the long queues and it's non-preemptive. So these are the advantage and disadvantage. And also is potentially bad for short jobs, and performance depends on a submit order, order in which the jobs come. All right. So example is of course the similar, we have seen that, if you're first in the queue, you don't care. I mean, you're just buying milk. Okay, if you're just buying milk, and then you are in front of you a person with 100 items in the trolley, then it matters. Okay, so that's a problem with this algorithm. So next one is shortest job first. Okay, this is again non-preemptive. Okay, it means that there is no clock timer which will say that after few milliseconds you just get out and let other job come in. Okay, so here let job run for time period till completion. Okay, now there is a, okay, right now here we say that let it run till completion. Okay, before next one is scheduled in. All right, now note that there are various variation of this algorithm. Okay, and we'll come to the variation soon after this algorithm. Okay, now here we are going, if there are multiple jobs available, then we are going to, this scheduler is going to schedule the shortest job first. When we say shortest job, which has shortest run time, okay, which is take least amount of time on CPU, because right now we are studying scheduling in for a CPU. Okay, all right. So however, if multiple jobs come, say J1, J2, J3, how do you know which has shortest runtime? There's no way to know, right? No easy way to know. All right. So however, let's assume that we know it, or a scheduler knows it. Okay, so let's take 4 example, example with 4 jobs, A, B, C, D. So and they, shortest is A, then B, then C, then D. Okay, the first finishes at, okay, I'm sorry, there are 4 jobs and the runtime for these jobs is A, B, C, and D respectively. Okay, so job A with time runtime A, B with runtime B, and so on so forth, right? So 4 jobs. So so first job finishes after A seconds, second job finishes after A and B, third job finishes after A, B, C, and last finishes at A, B, C, D. So mean time to finish, which we are using word called turnaround time. Okay, you can also use other mean completion time also you can use. Is 4A plus 3B plus 2C plus D by 4, right? So just add these up, this, and the one. And then you can see that factor which is most important is here is A, and then B, and then C and D, right? So if you, so now if you pick up a job which is shortest, smallest value of A, then of course this most optimal algorithm, right? So the shortest job first is in general a preferred algorithm on computers, because you may want to finish smallest job first. For example, you have, you are just trying to find out directory, okay, and or maybe you're trying to print something, or maybe just small computation is there, right? You have given interactive command, some command, and then you are waiting for it, right? So this small jobs always have priority, are given priority in computer systems. Okay, a variation of this is shortest remaining time first. Okay. Okay. So this is preemptive version of shortest job first. When we say preemptive, what do you mean by that? Okay, so basically here, when if a job arrives and has a shorter time for completion than the remaining job in the remaining time in the current job, then immediately preempt the CPU. Okay, what does it mean? So job is running, and the system knows, OS knows what is the remaining time of that job now, and so if a new job comes, okay, or new job is available in ready queue, that has a shorter completion time than the one that is running, then scheduler will preempt or context switch or move that job out, the running job out, and bring in the job that has a shorter time to complete. Okay, so this also called shortest remaining time to completion first. Okay, so now in order to run this algorithm, queue of jobs is sorted for estimated job length. Okay, so that short program gets to run first and not to be held up by long ones. So if there are multiple jobs available, then the queue will sort them out based on what is the estimated time for completion. Okay, so even if it's a ready queue, okay, it will try to find out, there must be a way to find out how much time is remaining for each job, and based on that sorting is done. So shortest job, the job with shortest remaining time will be the first in the queue, and so on. Okay, all right, any question up to this point?
Sir, in both these algorithms, we are assuming that we know the job length, like how much time it will require.
That's right.
But how exactly do we find it without actually running the program?
Yeah, good question. Just think about it. Think about it. What can we do? What can a system do about it? And it has to do it, right? In some way or other, there has to be some intelligence about it. I mean, if you're doing ls minus l or many simple things, right, then the kernel will know approximately how much time is required for this, right? Or very simple computation. If not, then what? Think about it. What can one do? Then what do we do in real life? Something called guesstimate, right? Which we often use this word, approximate, guess it. How do you guess it? Based on, there has to be some way to guess it. First is that if is the job being run in the past? If the same job has run in the past, then you can easily estimate it, right? Okay. Maybe different data values, then still a guess may be quite close to actual value. Okay, so there are prediction techniques and we'll look at one of that. Okay, and this all approximate, right? This all approximate. All right. So we will look at that, how to find out something, and obviously if new job is submitted with no data, there's not much one can do about it. Okay. All right, so now both shortest job first and shortest remaining job first can be applied for whole program or current CPU burst. Okay, what does it mean? You know, we can take the whole job, which includes IO also, right? Some, time for IO, multiple IOs, right? But we don't care about it, but we look at the whole program. And based on that, you run these two algorithms. Okay. Second is that we can only look at the CPU burst. Like, we have seen that there is a CPU burst and then IO, then CPU burst and IO and so on, right? Then we can consider only CPU burst time. And again, we have to estimate or do something about it, or maybe some data is available. Okay. So the whole idea in these two algorithms, because they are same, essentially the same. Okay, idea is to get the short job first out of the system. Okay, and it has major impact on short jobs and very small effect on long ones. Why is that? See, long job, let's assume there are two short jobs with ahead of a very long job. See, it's like this. If you are a person with 100+ items in your trolley, and there are two people in front of you, one is buying milk, another buying a banana, you damn care about it, right? Because it takes, for example, 10 minutes for you to for you to get service. Basically for you service time is 10 minutes. These guys are going to take maybe maybe 10 maybe 30 seconds or 15 seconds, something like this. So it doesn't matter, right, to you. Similarly, there's not much impact for the long ones, but there's a major impact for shorter ones. The ones, the people ahead of you in the queue will be very happy that I'm done. Okay, all right. So result is better average response time. Response time is, again, treat this as a completion time. Okay, average response time, if we will, because if there are 3 jobs, shorter ones are finished first, so but completion time for shorter ones is small in number, right? If larger ones, say 101 with 100 items, let's assume that 100 item guy takes 100 seconds, and then average finish time for that person ahead of you is 100 seconds. Then another person with, say, 1 item will 101. So 100 plus finish time for second one is 101, and finish time for third one is 102 seconds. So the average is 100 whatever, say 101 or something. Okay, while if the first is 1 second, second is 1 second, First one takes 1 second, second one takes 1 second, and the average finish time will be 102 divided by 3, something like that. Okay, so that's the impact. So this is the example. So there are 3 jobs. Job A with 100, job will take 10 seconds, and job job C will take 10 seconds. Okay, so let's assume A, initially only A is running in CPU because there's no other job, so this is scheduled. Okay, and then job B comes. Okay, so after 10 seconds, okay, at this point job B comes. The remaining time for job A is 90 seconds, while time required for job B is 10 seconds. Okay, so job B is scheduled, and after that C, let's assume C also comes at the same time, then C will be scheduled, and then A will be scheduled. Okay, so average completion time or turnaround time will be 50 seconds. All right. Now the question that you have asked is very important, that how do you estimate the future bus time? Okay. So basically we have to predict future bursts based on the past. Let's assume that we are considering only bursts now rather than complete execution time. Okay. All right. So now we can look at the past history of bursts for that job. Okay, for that thread, for example. Okay, so now so the past history is as follows: the previous burst, and this is actual number. Say let's assume n-1th burst. Basically just previous one. Let's assume we are trying to calculate burst length for nth burst, which we'll call it tau n, which will be based on actually how much it took in previous burst, how much time it took in previous burst. Okay, and then one before that, and so on. Okay, and based on that we try to find out the value, or we estimate the value of next burst, which you call it tau n. Okay, which is function of, we can say this a kind of function of, some function of how much time previous bursts have taken. Now you can design the formula, right? I mean, how much weight you want to give to just previous burst and previous history, right? So you can do exponential averaging using this formula. The tau n is equal to alpha. Alpha is some weighing factor, and then how much time it took just previously, the previous burst. How much time previous burst took, and then 1 minus alpha of tau n minus 1. Now note here is a tau, is not t. Okay. All right. So it means that now this tau n minus 1 includes the previous history. Like, tau n here includes the history of previous one, and then tau n minus 1 will also include history of the previous one, and so on and so forth, right? So this factor gives kind of history to you, and this gives the previous one, right? So now you choose the value of alpha and can decide what is right? So you can do the simulation. Okay, so you can choose, for example, alpha is equal to 1 or alpha is equal to half. When is alpha is equal to 1, then obviously this term will be 0. It means you don't care about past history, excepting you care only about the last burst. Okay, and so on. Okay, and then you run the simulation, you will find result something like this. Take all 3 values of alpha is equal to 0.5, 1 and 0.25. And then you can see the actual one versus estimated ones. Okay, and you see that if it's a 0.25, it means that you give too much weightage to previous history and less weightage to this previous instant. Okay, just single instant, you know, previous, just immediate previous burst, you give less importance because 0.25, and give more importance to burst which came before this. Okay, so you can see that you know, this actual one and the estimated ones are quite different, right? I mean, there's a huge difference between the two. And when it is same, alpha is equal to 1, it means that you estimate the next burst will be same as previous burst, then result is kind of better. And then 0.5 also you see that results are different. Okay, so here in this case, maybe some job, I don't know what is the characteristic of job, this one seems to be the best one. Okay, so all this, what we are trying to say is that there are methods available for estimation. Okay, the question you can ask yourself is that who's going to do all this, and how much time it takes for estimation and all that, and is it worth doing all this, because you know, estimation itself will take time. Okay, all right. So in order to find this answer, we'll have to get into OS design. All right, so right now for our understanding this good enough that scheduler can estimate. Okay, and based on that it can run shortest remaining time first. Okay, and this is quite optimal algorithm. All right, so advantage and disadvantage of this algorithm. The scheduler, this scheduling is optimal that it always produces the lowest average response time. Obviously we have seen that formula, right? 4a plus whatever. Okay, obviously because it schedules the shortest burst first, shortest job first. Okay, or short burst first. Okay, hence it runs quickly. All right. Disadvantages are that long burst CPU intensive processes are hurt with long average waiting time, right? So it's like that if you are in the queue with you know, 100 items, and then there's only one person in front of you has just 2 things, and you are happy, right? This guy will get away quickly. But there's another guy, you know, the server lets in another guy who has another one job. Then you must have seen this happening, right? You're in the queue and then guy says, oh, I have just one item, let me in. Okay, and then let's assume that hundreds of jobs come, because there's a rule, right? Then what will happen to you? You'll get irritated. Okay, similarly here, the, you know, the job, there's a possibility that, you know, if the superstore is heavily crowded, you may not, and you enter it at 9 o'clock in the morning, there's a good probability that you'll never get a chance till the time store closes. Okay, so there's a starvation. Okay, so with this algorithm, you know, there's a possibility that a process may never get a time to run on CPU. All right, so effectiveness, of course, is meeting scheduling. So effectiveness just hinges on one point, then how do you estimate next CPU burst? All right, any question?
No, sir.
Okay, all right. Okay, so we are almost coming towards the end. So waiting time for process P. So these are the metrics that we are going to use often. Okay, waiting time is basically, we have seen that, you know, many jobs have come, let's assume P1 has come, P2 has come, and so on. Okay, and then when the job gets scheduled, so let's assume P1 gets scheduled at time, this time. So this is the waiting time for P1. And P2, let's assume P2 gets scheduled here. Okay, then waiting time for P2 would be from the time it has come when it gets scheduled. Okay, the completion time is when, let's assume P2 is scheduled here and takes some time T, as a T1, and gets completed here, so that this is waiting time and the one here is runtime. So this is the completion time overall. So this time instant is completion time. Overall duration for completion is runtime plus waiting time. All right. So, and based on this, we can calculate average of waiting time and completion time for all processes, right? Because we have done this for a single process. Okay, any question so far? Okay, so we have studied first come first serve, shortage of first, and shortest remaining time first. All right. Okay, any question? Okay, so that's all for today. I don't want to take another hour because I know you guys want to do other things and then you have